says. Okay. So scene. You guys find yourself at some sort of legacy device while you are, going through your day-to-day in between the month. Thanks to Chuck, you all received an invitation to be on this subnet hangout to get together and discuss the colonial government. You would have also received a letter from a Claire Blackstone, Blackstone. So you log in. For those of you who are not necessarily technologically inclined, you do kind of fumble around like we just did for the past half hour, and you find yourself here at this point in time. In-game, it is the in-game time. It is the in-game date, so it would be March 17th, 2215 at 8:35 p.m. And you notice everybody that is together. So there we go. 3, 2, 1, lay on. Hello, colonists. I want to introduce myself. Not many of you, if any of you would know me, I was brought forth to you by Amanda Reynolds herself as a speaker on behalf of Jersey. I'm sure many of you have many questions. My name is Claire Blackstone, and I was one of the New Jersey senators prior to the fall of the United Federation of America. For those who know my husband, William Blackstone, I'm his wife, and Amanda reached out to me as she has just been elected governor of Jersey and has appointed me as her new interim governor of Empire. Sorry, and she's appointed me as her new interim governor of Jersey to help establish a new government in Jersey, where we found a lot of discrepancies in how the judicial system should work as we're forming one colony, as you have discussed at your past gathering with the ECT, I believe it was. I have with me my chief of staff. He's right next to me here. He's got to kind of lean in because computers are weird like that. My chief of staff, who is Andrew Walker, and he can introduce himself a little bit further.
Well, Miss Blackstone pretty much got it straight on. My name's Andrew Walker. I'll be taking notes for Mrs. Blackstone here. Anyone's more than welcome to ask me any questions, but I'm sure she can answer them just fine. As she said, I'm her chief of staff. Pretty much means that anything that she needs, I will do to the best of my ability.
I want to make quick apologies for the appearance. I'm calling from a small friend's household now that I am taking up interim governor, and that is a little beyond what Volan standards have been and have accepted. This has been very discreet, so I apologize. I'm not in an office. I'm not really dressed in anything formal, but I hope you will forgive me for that. So we're all here, and just to make sure, go around. Everyone knows why we're here, correct? Quick yes, no. Anybody confused? You can feel free to speak.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm confused.
You're
Yes,
confused?
Yes, I do.
No, I'm not confused.
Okay. Don't confuse me, sir.
I apologize.
All right. Okay, so quickly we've introduced ourselves. What about we go around and talk about who each other is. Fernando, I have heard of you, so if you want to introduce yourself.
Is that a bad thing or a good thing?
That depends.
Okay. What was your question again? I'm sorry. You took me aback.
Just give a small introduction to who you are and why you want to be on the panel, why you decided you wanted to be a part of this discussion.
I'm Fernando de la Rosa. I have been working with the ECT for quite some time in helping to stabilize things, because things are a bit chaotic right now in the colony. I've been working and talking with Amanda Reynolds and other leaders of Jersey and within Empire as well to try to create some sort of stable governmental system and trying to make things work better for all the citizens here. Right now things are a little chaotic in this flux where Voland is still hanging on to Cooper and everything that's happened in the past few months. I have a background in working in this sector and of government, and so I feel that's what makes me a good asset for this council, for this group.
All right, thank you. I believe your name is Chuck, who I'm hopping over to next. Who you are and why you want to be here.
Okay. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Chuck. That's what I'm commonly referred to as, and I am here to help make the ECT and the colonies a better place with my ideas and what I can help do with them.
Pretty simple and straightforward. You, Sir Nephilim.
There we go. Sorry, I turned off my speaker. Yes, my name is Michael Armisha. I've been involved with the East Coast Tycoons for about a few years now, and I have a strong desire to see our colonies become a country again, and to see everything work out well for us. That way we can get the proper funding and support we need.
Thank you. Mr. Forgotten? Gerard, is it?
Yes. That's Blackwell. My name is Gerard Lepumiere. I've been a long-standing member of the East Coast Tycoons for quite some time. I'm also heavily involved in the Amanda Reynolds campaign, and am a prominent figure known throughout the colonies.
All right. Thank you. Sir in the green.
Yes, well, my name is Sebastian. I'm fairly new to the ECT, however, I have had a couple of trips around the block, as it were. Primarily, the reason why I have such an interest here is to make sure that as much as the core ideals of the government are important, that we all stay moral on our path here.
Good standing values. I appreciate that. Miss Instructor Q-Node. I'm sorry. I'm learning all your names as we go. Thank you.
My designation, actually, is Instructor Node Ada 41 Alpha, but I'm commonly referred to as Henrietta. I simply wish to offer my knowledge of social psychology and a perspective of objective rationality in the creation of a government system.
All right. That's very, very important. Thank you.
There you go.
And our last member here, Marcus, is it? I'm sorry, sir. I don't believe I can hear you. Is your headset working? Or can you turn the volume up? Having difficulties hearing you still. I heard that. I don't know where that was from.
I believe that was from Sebastian.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Andrew, would you be able to work with him on trying to figure out his mic issues and seeing if we can fix that while I continue working? Or discussing. Sure. I don't know if there's a way to. Okay. All right. So we're going to continue. I believe your name is Marcus. and we will get back to you. Hopefully you'll be able to figure out the technical difficulties that you were having on your end. But yes, okay, so everybody is on the same page. Everybody seems to have good ideals for why they want to be here. In short, this discussion is based around how Amanda Reynolds believes that the colony should be run. She's fronting an empire, but I want to mimic what she is upholding in Empire here in Jersey. And so we created this system in Jersey, and we're bouncing the system ideas off you trusted Jersey occupants who have helped Amanda Reynolds and the Reynolds campaign, and any other trusted people that were invited by you guys or encouraged by you guys to join. This is not an election. This is not an appointment. Nor is there any other establishing of political power in this discussion. It's just solely a discussion regarding the general government of Jersey. So that is our goal for tonight, the basic backgrounds and skeletons of what we're going to try to achieve here. I have information based on what used to be the government system here in the United Federation. And so I would like to kind of bring that back into practice, if that's possible. We'll get into that. So yes, Jersey, forming our own government once again. I want to stress in this discussion that this is not yet the time to tell Voland that we are seceding. This is not a time to essentially say to, F off, for lack of better terms, excuse my French. This is not the right moment to ensue complete conflict. Any laws that we create will have to be in some accordance, or at least will work within Polish law and their constitution, so that we do not draw a true eye in a negative sense in our direction. As the Vanguard now, all of Jersey being under one banner, the Vanguard, we have to be very careful, as that name, as I heard was brought up at the meeting, was brought up as a possible worrisome name to use in Jersey, as it, those who are working in the Vanguard or the ECT who have now been announced as being a cloak for the Vanguard, this could have a very negative connotation to the public, and we don't want that. What we want is to establish just a peaceful government for all of us to work under. So the first question I want to ask to all of you is a notion of what kind of government that we want to see in Jersey. In the United Federation, prior to the plague that had happened, the government was run on a democratic republic system. I'm sure all of you are old enough to remember what such a system was like back before the plague. I don't know if anybody is younger than 15 on here. I don't believe so. But that is the direction that Amanda and I were feeling we should go with for this new system in government. I am just curious if anybody has any objections. So if anybody has any objections, please say so now. Well, I'm hearing crickets, so that's a good thing.
No objections
Democratic
here.
Republic it is. All right. This is just something very familiar to everybody, and it's a system that has a lot of checks and balances.
Hello?
Oh, is that you, Marcus?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Fantastic, we can hear you. Okay, yes, we can hear you now. Fantastic. Okay, so now that we established that point, let's go back to Marcus really quick. Marcus, thank you for joining us, and just give us your name and why you wanted to be here today.
My name is Marcus, as you stated. The reason I wanted to be here is because in my old village, I was involved in the law and order aspect of the village. And I wanted to make sure that there was a proper court system and justice system in the works for this new government that I've heard that you wanted to start. That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, I mean, certainly in a democratic republic, we would definitely be aiming in that direction. So, fortunately, you seem to be agreed to that, and I'm very happy that you have your headset there working properly, so we may continue. All right. So, is everybody familiar with what a republic is and how it works?
Yes.
3 branches of government, representative between the legislative, administrative, and judicial branch.
Fantastic. Point to Gerard. All right. So how
That's
these 3 branches?
No, that's exactly how it works.
Yes. Technically, a democratic republic just means that there are representatives chosen by the people. That particular setup is one type of democratic republic.
Well, then
Sorry to get off track, but yes.
No.
If that is
fine. Yes.
That's the exact model you're looking at, is what I'm saying.
So yes, to both. Both are absolutely correct. And Chuck had stated, a state in which the supreme power rests in the body of citizens entitled to vote for officers and representatives responsible to them. And then dictatorship, a form of government in which a ruler or small clique wield absolute power, not restricted by the Constitution or laws. This is the actual definition. Ignore the second part. I did not ignore the second part, and I apologize. But yes, okay. So how Amanda and myself and Andrew have discussed of 3 branches of government. That'd be the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. I cannot talk today. I apologize. Andrew, you may eventually have to take over for me. So everyone seems to be generically comfortable with what these branches of government are. I don't think we need to go in depth on what specifically the actual definition is. But I think we should start kind of at the one section of the triangle here, and let's start with the executive branch. So I'm going to put forth things about each section of this government, but then I'm going to leave things open for discussion for everyone to take part in. There's going to be a lot of things about terms and how people are either elected or appointed into positions. How many terms can people have? How long are those terms? So this is going to be very open in that sense.
Can I ask a question very quickly?
Sorry, what was that?
So can I ask a question very quickly?
Of course.
How would this system of government function underneath Polish rule as it is now?
Do you want me to take that offline with him, or just address that?
Sorry, I actually had difficulty hearing you. What was that again?
Oh, I'm sorry. How would this system of government work underneath Polish rule as it stands right now?
Do you want to take this, Andrew?
Sure.
I'm being the talker here.
Can everyone see me? Right, not sure how this
no,
technology
it's
thing works.
Don't touch the computer, it is touchscreen.
All right.
On the icon down there, and on the icon down there, you have to click on yourself right now because it's focused on me.
I did click it on me.
Yeah, it's fine. You can just click there.
There we
I'll
go.
just get into view of yours. All right. So technically, Voland is still the I guess the federal government, as it were, over all of the colonies, including Jersey. So technically, from the highest sense, we cannot legally create laws that specifically oppose anything within the Polish Constitution, or anything that does something like, for example, outlaws Polish law that is considered sovereign over here. As Mrs. Blackstone said earlier, now is not the right time to try to segregate ourselves or leave the colonies as a whole. That would we're just not in a position to be able to do that. What we're talking about doing is establishing a system that can be self-reliant at some point in time, so that maybe in the future we can do that. But we have to tread very carefully, because The more we talk about that, the more the GSG might consider it treasonous or sedition. So I definitely recommend that if you're interested in talking further about that we do it not on the subnet, offline sometime, perhaps when we're all together and no one else is listening.
Hint, hint, wink, wink. But yes, no, I do plan on having several council meetings, especially with, once we have finished this conversation, I'm going to take this back to Amanda, and we're going to discuss everything that we had discussed, and then we'll probably have another council meeting within the next few months. It can be with the same parties, it can be more parties to extend this information to everyone. So that is how that will work. So back to where I was, if we're ready. Are there any other questions?
I just want to, just to less wordy what he said. So he's pretty much saying is we can add to the laws, we just can't take away from.
Correct. I mean, we basically, as long as whatever we're doing doesn't fly in the face of the Polish Constitution, we can make any laws that we want. We can add addendums to laws, like, for example, in Poland, murder is illegal. However, you can further define murder. You can have different degrees of murder or manslaughter, or whatever it is that we feel like coming up with today. But you can't just say murder's legal all of a sudden, because that's technically against Polish law. Same thing like you can't outlaw paying taxes to Poland. It's just that would be against the Polish Constitution again. However, you can institute a special colonial tax that has nothing to do with Poland. All of that can be discussed today in varying degrees, but yes, we do not have the legal authority to undermine Poland in any way. And if people are not sure if something is against or for Polish law, I'd be more than happy to chime in on that, because I've read the Constitution back and forward multiple times.
It's very long and lengthy and horrible.
Is us setting up this 3-branch governmental system, does that go against what Poland has set up? Because they have their own police, well, not their own police, but they have their own judges, and the governors are technically Polish. What's the word I'm looking for? Governmental employees. So how would this governmental system work in regards to that?
Well,
would our head executive then be the governor?
Right. So Poland doesn't specifically they don't specifically have their own citizens here in the colonies governing us. Like, for example, Ed Cooper, he's actually not a Polish citizen. He's a colonist technically. The only
I understand that, but he is still a member of the Polish government by extension.
Yeah, so technically everyone here would be a member of the Polish government by extension. You're just not quite that high up on the food chain.
That's all I want to understand, if this government was a separate system than that, or whether it was trying to fold into the Polish government system that already exists.
Poland allows the colonies to autonomously govern themselves in any way that they want. I mean, for example, if everyone here was a former member of the USSR and wanted the Jersey colony to be communist, for example, it's completely legal. Poland doesn't care how each colony independently governs itself, so long as in so doing it doesn't undermine Polish law as a whole.
All right, thank you. I didn't understand where the distinction was.
And specifically, this actually answered someone named Tig's question, who was asking if we were looking for a form of governmental body that works within the Polish Constitution. Yes, and no. It's trying to find a balance.
We are certainly looking for something that works within the Polish Constitution, but something that also works autonomously for us as well.
Right. Okay, so are we ready to move on? Are there any further questions?
I have no further questions.
No,
All
none
right.
for me either.
Nope.
Good.
No more.
Okay. So, we'll start with the first branch of government to discuss. This would be called the executive branch. As it is currently, I am the interim governor, and so basically what this means is right now I'm the standing governor, but we do want to host elections for governorship so that it doesn't become a dictatorship and doesn't become like something we are all very familiar with in a certain place that we all know. So we are wanting to pose to all of you, what do you guys think, how long, how many years do you think a governor's term should be at first? Question. And the second question would be a maximum of number of terms that a governor can receive. So together it is how long is a term and how many terms can one person receive for governorship. As per discussion with Amanda and myself, we would recommend 2. But of course we want to open this up to the colonial body. And so what is your opinions on this?
2 years, 2 terms, or both?
Who was that? I'm sorry, it kind of cut out a little bit.
That's Gerard.
Yes, hello.
Hi. You said 2 years, 2 terms, or both.
It would be how many years is a governorship? So me being the standing governor, I would suggest that my term would be 2 years. And then from there, how many terms can I have is up to you as the colonial body that we're discussing with right now. So can I be reelected and how many
term
times?
limits.
Yes,
Yes,
terms
terms versus term limits.
Mm-hmm.
And this is to say that once an election happens, right? You're not stating that you are now going to be governor for 2 years.
Yes, it would be based on the term limits. I was just giving an example.
Okay.
Is it still going back between the various of you, or is it stuck on me?
It's stuck on Kelvin right now.
Okay, good.
Gerard.
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 Fantastic.
I don't know where I got that name from.
I don't know either. But he is a dashingly handsome forgotten.
But you need to click off of his picture to make it go back and forth.
Okay.
Or re-click his picture.
Yes. All right. So, yes. So with that question, someone had posted. Chuck had posted 9 months and 3 consecutive. So we'll start with Chuck then. Why 9 months and why 3 consecutives?
So 9 months is a pretty short amount of time. It allows us to, in the interim before we are able to actually establish a fully functioning, possibly not Volish aligned government, it would allow us to have more movement in the government to figure out what kind of leadership that we want. So we're not stuck on one kind of person for too long. It would also allow us to switch around like who's in charge so that we don't get stuck with the same person over and over again for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years if that person isn't what we need at that moment.
I agree that we shouldn't be stuck with one person, but by changing all the time, you're going to cause, I think, more chaos. The whole point of a governor is for stability. So 9 months seems a little flimsy on the exact amount, on that amount of time. I think 1 year is a good benchmark, and then you could have how many term limits come after that.
That's what I was thinking as well, Fernando.
Because if you're changing up your leadership every 9 months, then one, it just makes the group as a whole weaker because you're constantly running for office and you're not actually doing anything. And two, you're seen from the outside as being not able to hold onto, or the group not being able to decide and then stick with one form or one leader.
Well, the other thing is, why are we settling on one person in charge?
That
Why
is
don't
true.
we
We could
have a
have
group of people who are in charge?
we could have a
Why don't we
tribunal.
have-
Let me clarify. There are other branches of government who can apply checks and balances. Someone's very loud. There will be an executive branch, and in that executive branch, I'm just going to do a quick rundown here for discussion so it's clarified. There would be the governor. Right now, I'm the interim governor. I'm an appointed governor as we are setting up this established government. But by no means, depending on what we establish and when the government is ready to be set up, there will be elections, and you can either re-elect me or, whoever wants to run will be able to run based on what we decide. How that will work will probably be in the future. That's a little more specific. But there'll be elections for governor. Underneath the governor would be the chief of staff. Currently, this is Andrew. Basically, he is my right-hand man and my advisor. And is working with me and Amanda and working hopefully in time with the other colonies in this established government. And then underneath that, there is a secretary of the colony who basically is a liaison between the executive and judiciary branches, as well as internal colony diplomacy. That's basically their job. And we'll go into that later. So that's just in the executive branch. Beyond that, there's the legislative branch.
Can I say
Which
something
will
very
have a
quickly?
colonial senate.
Can I say something very quickly?
Just 1 second. Yes.
You are still on Gerard's picture.
I'm
So that's
here
all
on you.
That's all the audience is seeing.
I am.
Fernando, I think you might be selected on Gerard's picture because
Nope. Now it's selected on me.
Nope, it's everyone. Yep, now it got fixed.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Yep.
I'm able to select anyone's picture I want on mine.
Weird.
Yes, because
Anyway.
you're in the chat. The audience only sees what she clicks on.
Right.
So if you're clicked
Well, he's
on me
on
right now,
he is also on a separate legacy device. I think that's why he's slightly confused. But anyway, so yes. Okay. So that is fixed now.
the second thing I wanted to bring up was you are stating that this executive branch only has one person on top. That's the governor. I think what Chuck was saying is, does it have to be that way? Can we have 3 people in charge? Can we have? I think he was saying that why is this the system that is being set up? Can we look at other ways?
I was under the impression that this was the discussion to set up the government, not to take a government type that has already been established and sort of just move it around to make it fit us. I thought we were actually going to be talking about making one that would fit our needs instead of basing it off of the Polish government, which I don't think anybody really wants to do.
That is actually, both statements are true. She's still describing her ideas for what she would like, but at the very beginning of the discussion, she very much stated that if we wanted something different, we could. So we all agreed on a democratic republic. This is a type of democratic republic. If you have a different type of democratic republic that we think we should be ruled under, then you can suggest it.
I did. No, I did that. And she said that there were certain things that were up for discussion and certain things that were not up for discussion. And it was made clear, and I was under the impression that it was that the one person being in charge called the governor was the system that we were going with because that's what is currently established. Because that's what she said and that's how she worded it. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that how she phrased it was that some things were up for debate and some things weren't up for debate, and one of the things that's not up for debate is how many people are in charge in the executive branch.
She was explaining how it currently works right now. She has been appointed as an interim governor. Technically, Jersey has not had its own colonial government pretty much since the inception of the quarantine zone. So it's always fallen under Empire law. Empire law says there's a governor, which means technically right now, as far as what law says, Jersey has a governor, hence why she's appointed as interim governor. If you don't want to have it, governor's just a word. You could call it whatever you want. She's simply acting as a current stand-in for Amanda Reynolds, to help bring about the laws and everything that we want to establish here. If you're I'm a little confused as to what you mean by in charge, because as we were trying to get into, what we're proposing is like what you were suggesting, where there would be many people and various checks and balances in place, so that even the governor can't just executively say, well, you know what, this is the law, and no one can change it and do anything about it. Which is why we were getting to the through the three potential branches of government in this suggested democratic republic. But as Gerard pointed out, if you guys say, you know what, we don't want a democratic republic, we all think it should be communist. You know, I mean, yes, that's something.
No,
that could
so
be,
I was, just to interject, I'm sorry to cut you off. I went on to the subnet and I pulled up a definition for the actual dictionary definition of what a democratic republic is. And a democratic republic is just a system of government that is the members that are the persons in charge are voted on by the general populace. Not that there are three separate branches of this government. That's a separate thing. So I don't think that we need to have a judicial and an executive and a legislative branch. I think that we could have an executive branch, and then we could have a judicial branch, and then possibly a third one. But I believe that the two that are most important right now is a strong executive branch and a stronger judicial branch. And I think that the judicial branch could be run by 3 or 5 governors who could govern together, or they could be called whatever you want, because titles, the names of what things are don't matter. You have a group of 3 or 5 or some odd numbers to be able to break ties, and then those are the people or persons in charge that are able to vote to give immediate results and answers about questions or problems or situations that arise.
Chuck, what you're describing is an executive branch and not a judicial branch.
You're right, I was talking about the executive branch at that moment.
Yes. The 3 branches of government, the reason they existed before and the reason why people like to, at least in some way, stick to that general format is because it puts very specific powers into very specific places so that then you can have a system of checks and balances. A judicial branch would be those who actually hear disputes between the citizens and settle them and interpret the laws that have been put into place. The legislative branch would actually be the one who drafts the laws and votes them into place, and the executive branch is the one who is in charge of controlling the people that enforce the laws and the running of the government in general. So how we want to structure that is up to us. What you're describing is sort of a council system of people that can go and people can come to, and that is, there's different ways of applying that, but we're talking about the government that we're currently putting into place, and what's being discussed right now is for all of the colony of Jersey. I think what you're describing is something closer to a local government, which would be something under that, and I definitely agree with you that once we start breaking ourselves down into actual sections and thinking about how we're going to divide the state so that it can have equitable representation in each of the branches based on what we're doing, that is something that definitely we should consider. Right now we're talking about the big picture, macro.
Yeah, Kelvin, I agree that I agree that a council system would work more on a local government basis, but I also agree with Chuck that's saying that we don't need one person heading up the executive branch. We could have a few people heading that up, and we could have a few, so that you don't have power concentrated in one place. Because the executive branch, if it's in charge of all the other branches of government, if its job is to keep everyone else in...
That's incorrect. The head of the executive branch is not in charge of all the other branches of government.
Oh, that's how I thought Kelvin said it.
No,
The
how
executive
it's
branch.
established is they are all parts of a triangle that are connected to each other. Without all three, you don't have a sturdy form of government. The legislative branch is in charge of enacting the creation of laws and bills and figuring out what laws should be set in place and what things could be done within the colony as a whole to establish a more sturdy and focused government. Then you have the judicial branch, who is focused on taking, as Gerard had stated, colonial disputes between people and state, depending on crimes inflicted, and upholding what would then become basically the Jersey Constitution. And then you have the executive branch, who has different affected powers with outside relations. And while they may kind of oversee things, it's not really a oppressive overarch of a focused power. The governor is the speaker of the colonies. The governor is the person who is going to be the person who speaks out to the colonial people and addresses them on these changes. But the legislative branch and the judicial branch and the executive branch working together is what's going to make this a strong colonial government. And to clarify to Chuck, I apologize, that can be something that is up for discussion, and I do believe that each group that is within Jersey, as your nomadic groups are traveling separately, I do want to mention first and foremost that the colony is joining together, even in these nomadic segregated groups, as one united front called the Vanguard. Then you have the East Coast Tycoons, the Sons of Saints. Then you have, and the different other factions. And then you have your denominations, such as the MedCorps, PsyCorps, United Armed Forces. But when you're traveling together, you're going to have a melting pot of different people. And each of those people from those different groups can decide that they want to have a council. Now, we can discuss, we have a few questions that are being posed over in the Q&A section, so we will address those too. But we can discuss the benefits or detriments of having multiple governors, or how that would work. I do agree with Gerard, and thank you, Gerard, for stating what I'm proposing right now. What I'm stating right now is purely what Amanda Reynolds and I have discussed. So I didn't need to make any forward pros that there is no say on certain things. Everybody is allowed to bring up certain points. I apologize, my eye itches. But that's what I meant by it. Kind of discussing the backbone that Amanda and I have discussed, and then bringing it forth to you guys. So quickly, on a quick pause, and we'll go back to some questions are actually towards this. I'm going to answer or ask a few questions here from our Q&A. First are more with this discussion of not having only one person. Are you looking to have a committee? I believe I'm not really sure that was focused at Chuck or at myself. I think the answer is technically both are correct. In Chuck's version, you're having a system of people. I'm hearing an echo. A system of people who are working as a governing body, and then in mine, you're just having different groups that are committees within a larger committee.
I think we're also talking about different branches of government simultaneously here, so as to not confuse things. What we were hoping to do is kind of present the way that that Mrs. Blackstone and that Amanda Reynolds sort of came up with this idea that we sort of, I guess, wanted to pitch to everyone and say, hey, look, this is how we think it should work. And then if everyone hates it, then we go back to the drawing board. If people like it, then we build on it from there, and we have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of things that we purposely didn't flesh out because we didn't want to spend too much time going into it if people hated the idea. But as was said in the beginning, we did kind of drop a skeletal structure that we could show people. As far as the council question specifically, this is would be where the legislative branch comes into play, where we would want to have multiple, I guess, colonial senators or representatives that would kind of act as a council, if you will, a quorum, a group of people that would get together to decide what the laws are, and vote them into place. And that different groups of people within the colonies, like the East Coast Tycoons and the Sons of Saints and all the different factions and other divisions, would have representatives that would sit on this so that everyone's voice would be heard.
What about the faction list?
Yes, that's
same
exactly
thing.
the same thing. That's what I'm talking about.
Everybody would have representatives. Another question from a Karacinda. Who should be allowed to be you, Governor? Also, would there be an issue with many people changing hands? 2 years is a short amount of time. Also, if they live that long, I do not mean to be cryptic. That is a valid point in the world that we live in. Depending on what happens in this world, people do die, and other decisions would have to take head. I hope it doesn't come to that in people's electoral years. But I would assume that people will be changing hands. I think that 2 years actually is a short amount of time, even though it feels like a long time, especially with what we're experiencing.
I think there's, personally, there's merit to both. I think Chuck brought up a very interesting point earlier with suggesting a 9-month long term, but I do also agree with Fernando and Gerard, who said before that there would be a lot of chaos by having elections that often. In the past, and what we see currently in Voland and what we saw with the Cooper administration, and even, you would remember these from the days of old in the Federation, when terms were too long and there were no term limits, you had career politicians, and that directly bleeds into the question about corruption. Couldn't one person be corrupted? So, I think we need to strike that balance. You need to find a duration that isn't too short to where the colony would be thrust into chaos from all of the elections happening all the time and changing of hands all the time. But at the same time, you don't want it to be too long and to have too many terms, so that you can prevent what happened with the Cooper administration and all of the corruption that did happen with people staying in power for so long and basically just, using the government as a way to control the masses and gain wealth.
And tied with that, actually, Karacinda posed a question. I'm going to select it here. Couldn't a single executive of any group easily corrupt? Yes, that had been something that happened in the past. The hope is with this new government and with what we're establishing, we could start anew and not have that issue of career politicians, people be doing it for the right reasons, people focusing solely on the people as its focus and not their own wallets or not their own ambition, but the pure ambition of making Jersey and ultimately this country a better place. So I do understand the concern of that, but that is something that we will be trying to eliminate, and there are checks and balances for in this new system. And then Kirsten also brought up Chuck's point of also why only one person, why not more than one working together, and that is something we can discuss. Ultimately, it is one community, but I do understand that we can discuss that as Chuck did bring up that concern. But Tig had brought up a statement that the governor is the fluffy nougat in the middle of the triangle that represents the flavor of the whole. So basically, the middle of the four front representative as a whole. I have so many messages coming in right now from all of you. Sorry, I was in the Q&A.
Another thing to keep in mind with the number of people that you have running the executive branch as well, if you have too many people in charge of the executive branch, then you also potentially have issues where things are stalemated and you have a long period of time where policy can't be approved or can't be passed. Now, absolutely, you have the reverse side of that, which is corruption. But you have to make sure not to inundate the executive branch with too many people who are heads, because consensus is not something that happens often when you're dealing with people of differing ideals and views.
That's why I just wrote into to you guys that I had an idea of 3 heads of an executive branch, where every year someone's term limit is up, so that every year that person can be taken out of office if the people don't like them. So let's say there's 18-month term limits. At every year, one of those people, their term limit will be up. So so that's taken out of the rotation, but you always have 3 people in there. That way you cannot have 3 people sitting there stagnant. You will always have change within at least the year. And that way you have a balance within it, so you don't have one individual who has all the power who can get corrupt.
I think it's an important. I think it's an important thing to
people who are still there from their term limits left over.
Right. No, and that's fair. And you know what I think is very important that we all need to remember is that you know, everyone's kind of looking at this like the governor is a king or a dictator, and the terms all the power keep getting used.
Oh, I was thinking this for all the branches. Something similar for all the branches, where you have this rotating system where you have people who are there, but then every year, every however long the term is, 1 to 3 people are taken out of that pool, and 1 to 3 are now re-elected into that pool. So you constantly have a fresh changing of personnel,
right,
so it isn't stagnant. But at the same time, you have stability there because you always have, you know, the majority who are in the system still.
Right. I mean that's just the standard electoral process. Having groups of people getting elected for terms and then cycling them out. But no, I mean, I understand what you're saying, kind of like a hopscotch method where you have people's terms starting at different times, so there's more overlap. That's an interesting idea to do terms. The most difficult part about that would be establishing how that leapfrogging works to begin with, since we would be holding elections all at the same time. It means that we would have only 1 person or 2 people in place, and then we would have to add people later on to the group in order for that cycle of time to happen. There would have to be a period of time where there were fewer people in charge.
Or we have someone
Not necessarily. No, if we set it up so that the people go into it, and the 3 people who are currently in charge know that one person is going to end up going for maybe an extra 3 months, and then the person after him is going to be going for an extra 6 months, and then the first person is only going for the initial number, then we have it set up right.
That's true, but is that what everyone's
gentlemen? May I interject?
Yes.
As an expert in politics, I can tell you that although I empathize and understand what you're trying to do, the system in which you're putting into place is a nightmare to not only execute, but also to actually govern in. Yes, you can have, if you want, a council, but you cannot have a rotating set of people going in initially and then just say, well, let's determine who gets to be 3 months or 6 months. It's going to start so much infighting and so much politicking to get the right person to be the one with the longest term that it's going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do. So either you have all 3 run every X amount of years, or you put in a second rule, if you'd like, that any counselor can be voted out of office if there is an X vote from the legislative branch, for example, who would then confirm a council member, or if they have been convicted of a grievous crime by the judicial branch, for example. And that's how the checks and balances work. We are trying to simplify ourselves and be able to govern ourselves. And if we want to do it through committee, because we don't want to put too much power in somebody's hands, then I'm all for that. But we cannot ham-fisted or try to just trickle in government. We must put a government into place and move it forward.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying there shouldn't be the checks and balances. I'm not saying any of. What I'm saying is that, for example, just for example, we have Miss Blackstone, right? Who is the interim governor? Who is the interim governor? All right. Let's say we elect 2 more governors at this point. If she is to stay a governor with him, let's say we have 3 governors. At that point, because she started and was the interim before the new government was set in, perhaps she is the one who then has to go for re-election sooner, and that will start that ball rolling. Does that make sense?
It does. I do agree with Gerard that I find in time, 1, it become extremely cumbersome, and 2, it would become insatiably complicated, as in trying to 1, keep track of who's coming in and out as often, especially with different terms, and 2, although I agree having fresh faces in government is a logical idea, the other issue with that is what was brought up with worrying about things being accomplished in such a short amount of time, passing laws, passing...
But it's not the executive branch's job to create the laws or anything like that. It is their job to oversee the other departments within the government.
But they have to work with the legislative branch and the judicial branch, and if you're constantly moving out people in all 3 branches, you'll rarely have a moment of consensus where there isn't ultimately distraction between elections.
Another thing to keep in mind specifically is that with the executive branch, for example, they have potential veto power over laws and bills and stuff that get passed.
And then they can be outvoted, of course.
Yes,
that.
And then there's other veto overrides, and as Gerard mentioned before, impeachment processes for the governor should the governor be breaking the law, and other things of this nature. I think that what's happening here is that we're getting too focused on the idea of a quote-unquote single person as governor being this kind of like totalitarian, has control of everything, and there's nothing that we can do to stop them. And the system we're proposing isn't like the same system that was in place in Empire. It's a different version of that, and yes, it's still under Volish law because it legally has to be. But it is a very much so different version than what was in place before.
And we can discuss amongst everybody the idea of incorporating other members of that of the executive branch. I would disagree heavily, though, against the rotating system of the 3, 6, 9 month. I personally think that would be very, very overly cumbersome, but I am comfortable discussing the idea of multiple quote-unquote governors if we want to discuss that further, as Chuck brought up.
I, real quick, want to jump in and interject real quick. You said earlier that there were a few other people who are watching this right now, and who may have sent in questions or comments or concerns about what we were discussing, and the people that are currently having this conversation are starting to talk in circles. So maybe it would be good to get some fresh ideas from either outside of the people that are currently talking, which I believe is Gerard, Fernando, and the hosts of this. And I think that we should either have people that are watching this put in their ideas,
I have
or we
been
should have other people start talking.
going to the Q&A board for people who are outside of the viewers. I would like to hear from everybody else that is currently here. So, Michael, let's hear from you first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I haven't really been speaking too much because I agree with a lot of what Fernando's been saying. Now, I understand yours and Gerard's perspectives here. I've been looking over them, and I'm still fully debating upon if I believe that what Gerard is saying is going to be for the best outcome, or if I'm fully backing Fernando, which is why I haven't actually said too much.
Okay, simple. Sebastian.
Okay. I think that really the issue that we need to consider right now, more so than anything, is that as far as we, as people who have not been directly a part of any current government system that's being run since before Amanda took place, all we've had really to go off of is what Volan does and what the Cooper administration did, and we're not quite sure how much of what they did was legitimate and by what the books would considerably say. I think that regardless of what we consider and write down as a probability, we should give the current government a chance to run in terms of having non-corrupt people running it. That, of course, means that there are checks and balances that I'm sure exist on paper somewhere that were just not being implemented or used in the last administration. The second thing is, just so I can say it out there right now, 2 terms, 2 years. The reason why this is important is because we want to make sure that once people are in their seats, they have the adequate time to move forward, and that this way no one, regardless of being a favorite of the people for whatever reason, stays in the office indefinitely. And of course we keep the option of impeachment by a vast majority of the people, as is, the right of a free people. And then the last thing is that regardless of what we consider by talking in circles like this, we still have the rest of Jersey United pretty much to consider getting the opinions on or pitching these ideas to. Right now, honestly, I feel like we're stagnating. That's all.
Okay. I'm going to move to Henrietta real quick. I do want to get to everybody before I make my next statement. Henrietta?
I simply wish to make the observation that I believe the solution to the issue about how many people should be in power, if there should be a council of sorts, etc., I believe that the solution of that can be found if we truly define the extent of powers within each branch and the number of people that will be most effective in accomplishing those. If the legislative branch is involved in crafting laws, well, then we need to have a larger opinion of the masses in order to create laws that are applicable to the majority. Whereas if it is an executive branch which is simply in charge of the management of other branches, not a lot of people in that position are necessary. It is inefficient. So if we simply find the most efficient number to manage this, I believe that it will be easier to not speak in circles.
Marcus?
The only thing I'd like to say is we should define exactly what the executive branch's power should be before we determine how long said individuals or individual can be in office, because it could be a council of people, but all they could do is be in charge of the livestock, which doesn't make a difference how long you're in power. But if that's the only thing you're in charge of, then we should work that out before we decide on how long they're in office for.
All right. quickly, what I like to say, because I do agree, and thank you everyone for giving your points. I do also agree that we should flesh things out more so before we go ahead and I suppose establish those terms. That was a little bit of a fault on our end, but what we were trying to propose before, and if everyone doesn't mind, if we can kind of do a quick rundown of what each group, based on what we had discussed with Amanda, is first, so we kind of get it out in the open what we're kind of thinking as a whole before we start breaking down a nitty-gritty and breaking things apart, you know, as a collective. That would be really appreciated. After that, part of tying with what Henrietta said, and partly with Sebastian, we do eventually want to bring this to the entire colonial body. The issue is that right now we were looking to trusted individuals to kind of help establish different minds and how they think that the government should be, almost like taking a survey in a sense, where you are looking at a group of people and who all different mindsets and kind of thinking about what they want to see happen, and who are respected members in Jersey that are close to Amanda, who have supported Amanda, and without Amanda, really this really wouldn't have been possible without you guys and her. So the hope is that we can kind of come with a skeleton that we can then present further to the colonial body. Unfortunately, there are a mass amount of people in Jersey alone in different groups, and it is hard to get them together. But it was obviously achievable at the ECT encampment just a few weeks ago, so I'm certainly sure it'd be doable again. So to continue, to kind of get off circle, if anybody, unless anybody minds, I would like, if it's okay, to go forth and just read through the notes that I do have for what we would hope to achieve as a skeleton of the government, and then we can break further down based on everybody's suggestions, if everybody's amicable to that idea. So is that okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So we had talked about the executive branch, and there's another topic within that I would like to get to probably later when we discuss things more. But quickly, as I said, there would be. I'm currently the interim governor. Governor would be elected, and we would discuss for how many terms that governor be elected, and for how long the governor would be in the said position. Then there'd be the chief of staff, which is appointed by the governor and is a liaison between the executive and legislative branch. And then the secretary of the colony is the liaison between the executive and judiciary branch, as well as internal colonial diplomacy. So that would be a person who would be like a seat on the Jersey Council between these mini councils that was suggested prior. And then we also take a note that basically the executive branch would be allowed to present laws and ideas to the legislation for approval, and there's veto power over past laws in the legislative as a counterbalance. But at the same time, the legislative branch would be able to supersede that vote with a certain majority. And then beyond that, the other topic that I want to bring up, I'm actually going to highlight in red on my legacy device so we go back to it. Then you would have the legislative branch, which would have the colonial senate, which would have one representative of each recognized vanguard faction and division, so there'd be 9 seats total. Presiding over the colonial senate would be the chief of staff, so the chief of staff, who is already working as a liaison between the executive branch and the legislative branch, would be able to communicate back and forth and share information with what is going on in the colonial senate. And then we would like to pose to you what length terms should there be within this colonial senate, and how many times can that term be served. The legislative branch would be responsible for coming up with the changing laws as needed, and what majority is needed to pass. Quickly, one moment. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Andrew had to deal with a very pressing matter. How many terms
Can I
allowed to
bring
be
up two
served?
things?
Oh, sorry, 1 second. What was that?
Yeah. No, finish up, and then I have two things to say very quickly.
Yes. So they'd be responsible for coming up and changing laws as needed, and then we would discuss what majority is needed to pass said law, and then there would be the veto power over the executive branch, and to do so, we would discuss what majority is needed for that. And then I would like to propose what we want to establish as the actual laws at base. We can go into the more nitty-gritty once the Colonial Senate is established. But, at its base core, what do we want to believe in as a whole? What is something that universally the colonists do not want to stand for, such as, murder and theft and opinions on that, slavery, such things like that. Also, the Colonial Senate would be in charge of maintaining enemies of the state list, so laws are suspended when dealing with people on these lists. So, for example, to the colonials, Volan doesn't necessarily agree, but I would stand for it, the Najah, and what they've been doing to our countryside. I would count as an enemy of the state. And what do we do when in that zone? If people aren't allowed to freely carry firearms, they need to have a permit. Is this suspended when encountering Najah or being threatened by a Najah? Same thing with criminals, self-defense laws such as that. Also, another thing that the Colonial Senate would discuss, and what we'd like to discuss here, would be taxes and the barter system. It should be clear to everybody that there needs to be some form of tax that needs to be in place for our government to work. Amanda and I had suggested yearly tax to be collected as a flat value per person residing within the Vanguard during the year based on the length of time the person was staying there. So, quickly out of game, guys, a player comes to game for 9 months out of the year, they owe the yearly tax collection of 200 credits per month. So, based on what we decide on that in-game, what the credit value would be and what taxes they would pay each year. Then you have the judicial system, which is working closely with the CPF, the Colonial Police Force, and Empire via Amanda Reynolds to decide how this should work. So we would discuss what we kind of think we should propose for this, and then we'll talk with the CPF, we'll talk with Amanda and present to everybody. The CPF will be the law enforcement. I think everyone would technically be and agree with that. I don't think anybody wants to ECPD in power anymore. However, there is certainly no formal judiciary in place for carrying out the trials and making sentences right now. So although the CPF will be the law enforcement, we do not currently have a judicial system set up. There needs to be a decision on if these positions are appointed by executive branch or elected positions or some kind of combo. Empire is executive appointment based on CPF nominations for those that have been served in the CPF as well. So in Empire, the way Amanda Reynolds has talked about doing it is appointed officials, but we don't have to do that. And then
just a question,
yes.
real quick. For those of us that don't know what CPF stands for, can you clarify?
Colonial Police Force.
Thank you.
Yeah, Colonial Police Force, and ECPD is the Empire Empire City Police Force. So then you have the discussion, what we'd like to propose on how many levels of court do we want. Empire has 2 levels of court. They have local court and they have colonial court. Colonial court is for severe crimes, and when there is a jurisdictional grievances, local court is usually fine for most crimes overall. So local court uses judges and jurors, and the colonial court uses justices and jurors. Justices would be above judges, as they would be a ruling body over the colonies as a whole, the colony as a whole, and judges and justices preside over trials and decide punishments for crimes if people are found guilty. Another point that we like to discuss is what valid sentences should there be. Does the colony want to have capital punishment? Do they want community service or indentured servitude, death penalty, fines, jail, etc.? And would the and the judicial the judicial branch would also be allowed to deem laws made and passed by the legislative branch as unconstitutional and force rewrites of the law if need be, if they find them to be not in accordance to what this new constitution that we are setting up is to be in the future. So that is a basic rundown. I kind of went through very quickly, so we're not going on it forever. But that is a basic rundown of what we kind of wanted to go over tonight. And at this point, we can kind of go down into the nitty-gritty and break it further. But
Can I?
yes.
Yeah, Fernando said he wanted to say two things like 10 minutes ago, and then when he's done, I want to say something that's been bugging me for the past, I don't know, hour and a half.
I
Okay.
just wrote down a bunch of things as you were talking. I just want to bring up. These are things I think need to be brought up. The secretary being selected by the governor, I think is a strange way. If the secretary is in charge of the Senate, I believe that
That's
the secretary.
It's not in charge of. It's the Speaker of the House. So not necessarily in charge. What the person is doing is basically sitting there as a vocal body who is bringing forth what discussions and bills and whatnot is going to be passed. Not necessarily in charge of the Senate.
Will that person have the power to break ties and things like that, or we should not
It
have
would to be
ties
by
because of the
majority
number in the
vote,
Senate?
and ties is something we can discuss.
Okay, because I think that the Senate should be set up so that there is no way to that there should be an uneven number of senators that ties can't happen. I do not think that a person who is selected should be put in a position where there's a tiebreaker. If a tiebreaker is needed, I think that is a different position that should come from a election within the Senate members themselves. Secondly, Naja. Even though we can't, technically right now, we're not allowed to defend ourselves against the Naja because that goes against the treaty that Poland has with them. If we attack them, that's considered breaking the treaty because right now we are not under the protection of the treaty. The treaty states the mainland of Poland as being a no-go for the Naja. If they come in here, they're allowed to come and attack us. But if we attack them, according to the wording of the treaty, that means that a Polish citizen has now attacked Naja and has broken the treaty. That's
incorrect.
That is incorrect? That's how it was
That's
explained
incorrect. The colonists are not part of the Polish government in the sense that we're not Polish citizens, which is why the Naja are able to do essentially whatever they wish to do to the colonies.
I was
the thing
told
is
differently.
No,
Okay.
The reason that they're able to do whatever they want in the colonies and anywhere outside of Poland is because the treaty specifically states that they have an agreement with Poland and no one else.
All right. That was my misunderstanding. I was told that because we are colonists, that they consider us colonial subjects, and that means that if we attack them, then the treaty is being broken. So we're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. If that's not the case, that's not the case.
You are both right in the sense that the Naja are affiliated with Poland and their mainland. That is why they're allowed to come here. Poland does not protect us in any way of the Naja and their growth throughout Northern America. So we, as colonial citizens, by Poland's standards, are not supposed to attack the Naja, as they do have a treaty. I do think that as tricky of a situation it would be to name them as a enemy of the state. I think the protection of the people, first and foremost, is what's important. Think about it in this perspective. We already have established our own police force here in Jersey, the CPF, and we do not abide by the ECPD, even though Poland does. We need to make small, gradual steps, and I don't think that the Naja certainly aren't going to care if we attack them. They see us as nothing to them. So if we attack them, it's not going to be a quote-unquote breach of treaty. As we are as much bugs to them as they are to us. Yes.
Did you want to say something, Chuck?
No, I didn't have anything else to say.
No, okay. I have a few other things.
I'm sorry, I did have something else to say. I'm just,
Okay.
Fernando, are you completely done with what you were saying?
No, I have like 3 more things to say.
Okay.
Then you
said,
finish you, and then I'll go.
Okay, you said within the Senate that there'll be 9 council members, 1 for each faction. What about the citizens who are not particularly aligned with a certain faction? Where is their representation? Also, the taxes, so that a certain amount of months you're with the Vanguard, you get taxed. What about individuals who, once again, non-faction members who are living, getting the protections of the government but are not associated with anyone? They are then living in the colony under the government, under the protection, but not paying any taxes to it. That is something else that needs to be brought up.
If you are not okay, sorry, quickly to clarify on that. The Vanguard is encompassing Jersey. There are groups who have not aligned themselves with the Vanguard, such as the Death Row Ministry. Because they have decided not to join with the Vanguard, they will not be granted the protection of the Vanguard or the New Jersey system. And we cannot force them to do so. They will just not receive any protection from us. And that is unfortunate.
But they are indirectly, though, because by keeping order within the state, they are then gaining the protections of the state.
We're getting very off topic. Again, we're getting incredibly off topic. I want to hear from Chuck, because apparently he actually had a concern regarding what we were discussing. I'm sorry to interrupt you two, and this is definitely something we should discuss, but we have brought a panel together to discuss how to govern ourselves and what choices we need to make, and we're getting hung up on whether or not giant bugs that like to take us and experiment on us are bad.
I completely agree.
So, I'm sorry, the discussion that we can definitely have at a later time, but we have worn on to the evening and have not gotten further in the actual point of this panel.
And I agree. So, Chuck, your concerns.
Chuck, you're muted.
We can't hear Chuck. Can you unmute him?
I'm sorry. I muted myself by accident. I had to walk away for a moment. So my concerns with this panel currently, and it's been going on for almost an hour and a half, is that the panel seems to not be discussing much of anything. More of you and Amanda Reynolds had come up with a system with the government that you decided would work, and that's fine because you are currently in charge. But the panel really isn't discussing how to run anything. I guess that's mostly because we haven't actually gotten to a point where we can. But it also seems that every time that we put a thing out there of how to do something differently or a way to do something, it's either already been discussed and we're being told that we don't have a say in it, or it's no longer relevant. So I'm
I think that's
trying
sort
to figure
of,
out why exactly the
I think
panel
that's
is
sort of unfair. No offense. I just find that sort of unfair. I had presented that I wanted to explain what Amanda and I had discussed as a base, and if you disagreed with that, we could discuss it. But I was also interrupted in that discussion. So I would like to now move forward and do that now that I have gotten out what we had discussed. But initially I had stated I would like to present what Amanda and I had discussed, and we move on from there. So I do think that is kind of unfair.
Okay.
To do and to say. But if everyone is in agreement, then yes, we can move on to what we believe we as a collective body and a panel would like the government to be.
No, I think we can move on to what you had originally planned to do, which is fine. We can do that. I'm just saying that the panel was going on for an hour and a half now. We haven't actually discussed anything of.
Well, that's also because there's been interruptions.
Nothing has happened from our conversation. It's been sort of just we've been talking in circles, like I said earlier.
Again, if things have been okay. Thank you. Then let's discuss on how we would like the system to run. I would like everybody to discuss what kind of government they would like to bring forth. Chuck, you would like to have a council group or multiple governors that you had brought up. And are people in agreements with this? And if so, how many governors, how much time, would they be in office? What do we want the branches to be filled? Do we even want branches to begin with? I'm feeling kind of lost. I tried putting things on the table. I just am very confused right now in the sense that this is going very differently than what I had expected, and obviously you are all upset about how this is going. So I digress, and I would like to listen to all of you and what you would like to propose.
I just want to let you know I'm not upset. This is politics. It happens. But I think there should be one governor, and there should be a check and balance system between the two other branches. Because if you put too much power under one person, I understand that you guys want to do a council for the governor and such, but what would be the point of having 3 governors? Because then you're splitting up the power that that one person would have to veto the other 2 branches between 3 people. So I don't see the
That's
point.
not the governor's sole duty, though. There's other duties the governor has.
But we haven't discussed what those duties might be.
So
those need to be brought up, exactly. I think
so
before
we
can
should discuss
decide,
what the different groups of government are going to be, and then we should assign each of them duties and that sort of thing. And if there will be multiple branches of government, then each of those branches have clear and very definitive outlines on what they are and are not allowed to do. And then checks and balances can be written up between them. And so if there is going to be an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch, which is what seems to be the majority of people here want to do, then we can come up with an executive branch and what they can do, and the judicial branch and what they can and cannot do, and the legislative branch and what they can and cannot do. My suggestion for the executive branch, since that's what we were talking about, was to have 2 people in charge of it instead of just one person, because I personally believe that multiple people in charge is able to have more ideas go around. And I can probably go onto my legacy device and pull up sometimes in history that may have worked. It may also have not worked. It depends on what sort of history I can find. But I do believe that a multiple governor system of at least 2 people would be better than having one person in charge of a single branch of government. Those are my thoughts.
And I disagree with you, Chuck, because ultimately, if you're going to have an executive branch, you need an ultimate arbiter. However, what you are discussing, and I think what would be favorable and would go along with what you're saying, and it's something that has not been mentioned, is so far we elect a governor, and then the governor then appoints his cabinet. What if instead we elect the cabinet and the governor? And then that would alleviate your feeling about having just one person who's in charge and that's it and they have all the power, whereas the people who are advising him and therefore are in charge of the various branches within the executive branch would also be elected positions. Would that appease you? Would that be better for you?
That would... Okay, then that is a lot closer to what I had imagined. That would be my own. So I agree with that. I think it's a fine idea. My issue with government in general is that if one person's in charge, you're going to lead to corruption. We've seen Ed Cooper get corrupted. We've seen the Polish government corrupted, and I can't actually pull up what the Polish government is. But if I could, I would be able to point out different things that the Polish government does that is easily corruptible, so we can try to mitigate that.
I also feel that that way will stop cronyism. If we have, I'm sorry, I can't remember what the term is again, but the governor and then his cabinet are both elected. I believe that's probably a way to stop the governor from filling the executive branch with everyone who agrees with it, or just his friends or people he promised to give power to if they help him get into his position. Someone has an echo.
Gerard, real quick, your microphone is creating an echo. Could you either lower your volume or mute yourself when you're not talking? Because there are volume bars at the bottom that are indicating where noise is coming from, and it's coming from you.
If I may jump in just quickly about the three-system government, I personally, and I could be completely wrong about this, and you can all completely disagree with me, but it's just in my opinion, I feel that a two-branch government might work better as more simplistic, in that you have a legislative body and you have a judicial system, and that you have the executive system comes from self-appointed or self-voted leaders from within each cabinet. So you have the legislative system, you have the judicial system, and then the senators from the legislative system and the judges from the judicial system then vote one individual each to then be basically the heads of their system, and those together create, I guess, an executive branch.
I completely disagree with that. I think the judges and the court system should be a completely different branch, so they only answer to themselves. They don't answer to the other branch or people who would control the other two branches or the other branch.
Well, I still then maybe just a senatorial system where within the legislative branch you have the representatives, because have the representatives then select whoever's leading that the Senate. That person then acts as basically your executive, because having three systems of government, I feel, just creates too much. Yes, there are check balances, but at the same time,
This is for the colony of New Jersey, if I may speak in, Fernando.
yes.
This is
Yes.
for the colony of New Jersey. We're not like a massive area. Realistically speaking, we're trying to implement a government, like a large-scale government system for a country onto our small colony.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say. We don't need this giant three-branch of government system. We can have a body which creates the laws. You have a body which interprets those laws and has those says whether they're legal or not, and then judges people on whether or not they have committed crimes or not.
Guys,
You
I'm going
don't
to talk
need
out
any-
of game for a half second here, because I think people think that we're trying to implement the U.S. federal government to the state of New Jersey. Guess what? That is how the state of New Jersey is actually run out of game. I've linked it twice.
No, and we have seen it, and still going to discuss this.
Yeah.
We know. We've all seen it.
You guys are like, no, this is like a big country. It's government. This is how government works. You want to talk about the particulars? I'm willing to talk about the particulars, but the argument that this is our small colony is too small to be run this way, come on.
All right.
Sorry to take it out of game.
That's
So-
fine. As a point, which I was just going to say in game, starting out a colony under the this new idea of a three-branch government would actually be a way to expand this government system if and when, hopefully, the colonies are joined under one banner, and we don't have to go back to this discussion again. It's something that we can expand to colony as they unite, which we all had discussed that is something that we would like to accomplish for simplicity's sake, so we're not segregated. So I disagree that it would be overly complicated, but that is something that a majority we decide that we want to do, then so be it. But I would like to make a point that the colony is not so small that it is unrealistic that is what can be done.
My argument was not that it was too small. My argument was that it creates traffic. It creates you have different people. You have so many different people vying for what their idea is, and that's lovely. That's exactly what government should be. But when you have the executive branch being able to completely throw out anything after a representative body has decided that this is a law that the people want, this is the law that we should have, and then you have another person who can then throw that out right away. Yes, I understand it can come back and can still be voted in, but that just takes up time, and we're trying to get this started. We don't have time to jumpstart it. And correct me if I'm wrong, when the America's government was first started, it was just a Congress. That's all there was, and they were the ones who set everything up. They were the ones who ran everything until they then got their freedom and then set up the system. But before that, the laws were already put in place by basically a two-system government where you had a judicials and then you had representatives. And it wasn't until that they were a fully fledged country that they created that third branch of an executive branch. You had individuals within that that Congress that they had who were in charge, but they were self-voted from those representatives. And I think that's a better system for us starting out. We can always implement a third branch of government later, and I think that should be in our Constitution, that if and when the point reaches that this becomes a multi-colonial system, that third branch is enacted. But for right now, if we look into the past of how the American government first was started, it was basically a two-branch system until they were their own independent country.
Okay. So, to simplify this, who is in favor of a two-branch government over a three-branch government? Marcus, your vote?
I am for a three-branch government, because in a two-branch government, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Henrietta?
My concern simply is for the efficiency of 3 groups versus 2 groups. I do not find that it is a terrible thing to have 3 separate groups and that it creates specialization, but I can see the benefits of having 2 in the sense that it reduces numbers. However, I do think that having 3 separate specialized groups creates more efficiency, but to mitigate the concerns about numbers, you simply reduce the numbers of people who may be working in those branches.
Okay, so that is 2 for a three-branch government. Sebastian?
Three-branch government is important, so this way there is always a check to a balance. If you don't have 3 branches, you only have 2, then you end up running into the problem where either they oppose each other and it's a stalemate, or they agree with each other and it looks like it's an overwhelm.
It's 3. Fernando, you are for a two-branch government.
Mm-hmm. For now, yeah.
All right. Chuck, you were for... You're muted again, sir.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Oh, I am for a two-branch system.
Two-branch system, so it is 3-2. Michael, you were in agreement with Fernando, so we're at a stalemate at 3 so far. Gerard?
3-branch government.
We're at 4, and I would vote for a 3-branch system as I suggested it, which puts it at 5-3. Overall. So with that and Andrew not being present, that would be majority vote that it would be a 3-branch system with an executive, legislative, and judicial government. We have made pseudo progress, sort of.
We have now decided how many branches of government there will be. Not bad for 2 hours.
That's something.
You know what?
Certainly.
Sorry, Andrew is back. We have just decided that we are officially having a 3-branch government.
Ah, excellent.
One second, guys. Hold on, out of game. How do I
Is everything okay?
Do 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 do.
Yeah, so one of the prospective players was messaging me, and he was like, I find it very odd that watching this whole thing. He was like, it's like watching a very different form of debate going on.
The thing is like people get hung up on thinking that like all of Jersey is nomadic. All of Jersey is not nomadic. The reason the ETC is nomadic is because there are permanent encampments and settlements all over Jersey that they travel to trade with.
Oh no, I understand that.
Yeah. Right. So that's why it's not a nomadic society.
No.
Yeah.
The thing was, she said that the basically the senatorial council will have one representative from each faction. So far, all the factions are people within the vanguard. There are still people who live in the state or in the colony who are not part of the vanguard. They will be receiving benefits through proxy of just being in Jersey because there's still going to be police force.
Hey guys, can we talk to you for a minute?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey guys.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, no, it's not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about this. As many of you guys might know, some of you might not. My mom, she's been battling with cancer since September. We found out about it, and she's had a lot of she's been having a lot of medical issues and stuff. An infection. She's had a couple surgeries. She just had a seizure upstairs, and we had to call 911. I think she may have had a stroke because of the way that she's been responding to everything, and you know,
Go, man.
yeah. So
Go
you
do
know,
it.
No. You go do personal life. This is done. For
Real
all
life
intents
is more
and purposes, we can
important.
Table this until later.
Yeah, we're gonna table it. I want to go with him.
You go do you.
Go.
No,
Okay.
don't even justify it. Just go.
but if we can continue, you know, whenever.
Yeah, we get it.
Aaron, you don't need to
Aaron,
stay.
we'll
You
continue.
go.
Your mom's okay.
Go.
Go.
Okay,
Go.
bye guys. Thank you.
Good luck.